basically just raw physical matter. And we're doing it for the sake of giving ourselves energy to serve Hashem. And enjoying the food by making a bracha, and in the context of religious life, that's called changing darkness into light, and that which is bitter into that which is sweet. We're taking raw material, raw physical matter, and elevating it. And that's true, and we do that all the time. Whenever you put on tefillin, you're doing that. Whenever you daven, you're doing that with your mouth. That's what we're doing all the time, that's Jews. But we also have to talk about, in this idea of changing that which is dark into that which is light, and converting bitter into that which is sweet, we have to talk about it in more historical sense as well. I don't know about the rest of you, but going to yeshiva, there was definitely a feeling that our generation is the most miserable, awful generation to ever live. I've had that feeling. If not, maybe I was told that directly. That was definitely the general feeling that one gets. And the truth is, there's reason for it. There's reason for it. We know that there's an idea of Yeridas Hadaros, the generations get weaker as they go on, which would therefore, by definition, mean that the last generation before Mashiach comes would be the weakest. So in a certain sense, we are the darkest of all generations. We are the most bitter of all generations. And therefore, the obligation of changing darkness into light, and that which is bitter into that which is sweet, becomes even more profound when it comes to understanding who we are. See, in other words, changing darkness into light, in the context of our generation, means more than just, making a bracha when you eat. It means looking at ourselves and recognizing the bitterness and the smallness that we find in our generation, but looking at it from eyes of pnimius, looking at it from lichtigais, from an illuminated place, and trying to understand that in that darkness there is found something that is sweet, and there's found something that is light. Let me read to you what Rav Tzadok writes in Parshas Vayechi. This is in Pri Tzadik. If we'd be allowed to tattoo, we should tattoo this on ourselves. We're not allowed to. But this is what he says. Shelo yimas levaveinu. Rav Tzadok says that a person's heart should not melt. That we find ourselves in the last generation before Mashiach comes. And in every generation we see that the people become weaker, souls become weaker. We don't daven as much as we used to. We don't know as much as we used to. So the obvious question is, how is it possible that we'll be able to see Mashiach? So Rav Tzadok writes, but nevertheless, says Rav Tzadok, we do find something in Jewish history. That daika the galus, that specifically in exile, there's a level of holiness that a Jew can reach, davka in galus. That's what Hashem wants. And he explains, and I heard from the Yira Kodesh, from Pshizcha, that even though it's true, there's a reality called Yeridas Hadaros, that the generations become weaker. And we are therefore the weakest of all generations, and the darkest of all generations. Nevertheless, the point of the Jewish heart, there's a point inside of us that's nitar b'kol darva yosef, that becomes more pure after every generation. Now that would be a long tattoo, but that's the point. That's the point. In other words, the way they're sort of explaining this even further, it's not just that happens to be we're weaker and weaker and weaker, and there's a certain element that we're stronger and stronger and stronger. The pnimius of it is that within that point of weakness that our generation experiences, in that point of weakness, there is something profoundly great about it. And when one looks in a deep way into ourselves and into our generation, b'chlal, one should be able to find an unbelievable source of light and a source of sweetness in the actual thing that looks on the outside as bitter and dark. Let me explain where this is coming from. As religious Jews, hopefully we've asked this question to ourselves, if not to our Rabbeim. Why did Hashem create the world? Right? It's a pretty basic question. It's a simple question. The answer is not so simple, right? Why did Hashem create the world? We know that once Hashem created the world, we know what we're supposed to do. That we know. That's all Yiddishkeit. That's what they teach us in Yeshiva, what we're supposed to do. The question is, why did Hashem create the world? Why start this whole thing in the beginning? So the Rizal writes in the beginning of Eitz Chaim the following thing. The Rizal, it really opens up more questions, but this is what the Rizal says. The Rizal writes in the beginning, in the beginning of Eitz Chaim, that the reason why Hashem created the world is because He wanted to have a world to reveal His greatness. That's basically what the Rizal says. If Hashem, without a world, Hashem's great, but Hashem can't express that. Hashem can't show His greatness. In order for Him to show His greatness, He needed a world. So that's the purpose of creation, to have a world where Hashem can reveal His greatness. Ad Kan, that's what the Rizal says. Now, the Ramchal talks about this at great length. And the Ramchal, in many of his svarim, whether it be Klach B'Zchei Chachma, Sefer Vichuach, many of the Ramchal's svarim, he talks about this idea. And he says, let's pinpoint exactly what aspect of Hashem is he trying to reveal by creating the world. He says like this, if you're talking about Hashem's wisdom, so he says that can't be it. That can't be the quality of Hashem that he's interested in revealing by creating the world. Why? He says because ultimately, because we're human beings and there's only so much wisdom we could comprehend, Hashem would never be able to really show ultimately his real wisdom, because we wouldn't be able to understand it. And the same thing is true with most of Hashem's characteristics. The world can't be created to reveal Hashem's strength, because the world is finite and there's only so much he can show. But says Ramchal, an unbelievable point. There's one characteristic of God that could be 100% fully revealed dafka by the creation of the physical world, which is not Hashem's wisdom, it's not Hashem's strength, it's not anything like that, but it's the oneness of Hashem. The oneness of Hashem is the one trait, the one aspect of God, Kiviyachol, that could be fully revealed by creating this world. How so? How so? So I'll give you a mush. I'm not, I know how to play chess, but I'm not like a huge chess player. But just in theory, when it comes to chess masters, right, there's basically two levels of chess masters, right? This is at least what they say. One level is that whatever, let's say you're playing this guy, so whatever move you make, he has a response. He knows exactly what to do. You'll never beat him, because whatever you make, pawn to check 3, whatever the words are, he knows exactly how to respond in order to get it ultimately a victory. That's level number 1. So this is an unbelievable chess master. He's never going to lose. But ultimately, he's reacting to the opponent, right? The opponent makes a move, and he has to react by countering with something better. The ultimate level of a chess master is much greater than that. The greatest chess master is actually able to manipulate his opponent to make moves where the opponent thinks he's winning, right? Only to realize at the very end that the whole thing was a big game. And the whole thing was the chess master just playing with him and just toying with him, making him think that he's winning, only to show his mastery of the game. This is how Hashem runs the world. See, Hashem created the world in such a way, says Ramchal, where there's a lot of things throughout history that seem to be going against God's oneness. If Hashem is one, and Hashem loves us, and Hashem loves the Jewish people, and He wants everything good for us, then there's a lot of questions we could have throughout Jewish history. There's a lot of tragedies, all sorts of things that could happen personally and collectively to sort of indicate that there is no one God. But the greatness, the way that Hashem reveals ultimately His true oneness is to create a world where until the very end it seems that every move that the nations of the world make and every move history takes is going against that one God. But the greatness of the chess master of Hashem, so to speak, is that when Hashem finally says checkmate, when Hashem finally brings the redemption, then it's going to become clear not only is He smarter than the rest of us, and not only was He able to counter every move of the Yetzer Hara and every move of the other side of the nations of the world, but it's much deeper than that. The greatness of Hashem is that it will be revealed that every move that the nations of the world made against the Jewish people and against the oneness of Hashem, and every move that the Yetzer Hara made against the holiness of every Jew, was itself Hashem manipulating the world into thinking that there is no one God, only to reveal how great He actually is. So in other words, the unbelievable oneness of Hashem is truly expressed when you have a world that seems the opposite of the one God, and ultimately it's proven that it's been the one God the whole time. That's ultimately what expresses the true oneness of Hashem. Because again, God's strength, there's a limit to what we can experience. God's wisdom, it's a limit. But if you create a world of physical reality that seems to be running, that constantly seems to be running against the true one God, against the one God, and history is leading towards a situation where the Jewish people are mamish broken into a million pieces, and then dafka at the end it's revealed that this whole thing was a game, that this whole thing, every single step along the way of world history that seemed to be leading to the demise of the Jewish people was ultimately leading to the success of the Jewish people, that reveals the greatest level of the oneness of Hashem. That even that which seemed to be opposed to His oneness was part of His oneness. That's what Ramchal says. That's an unbelievable thing. Now that's true. By the way, if there's any questions, please feel free. So I'm just going to keep on going until 40, but I'll just keep on going. Now this is true when it comes to Jewish history in general, world history. That every move in history which seems to be going against, like I said, it seems to be going against the truth of God and the truth of the holiness of the Jewish people, When Mashiach comes, it's going to be proven not only was it going against the oneness was it not going against the oneness of Hashem, it was in fact part of Hashem's plan to reveal His great oneness. That He was a chess master the whole time manipulating the opponent. Now this is true not only when it comes to Jewish history. This is true in the lifetime of every individual Jew as well. Every individual Jew has the same experience. See, the Jewish people, Chazal say that the Jewish people are intimately connected with Hashem. Yisrael v'Arayis v'Kucharichucha, the Jewish people and Hashem are one. And just as the purpose of creation was ultimately to reveal the oneness of Hashem throughout all the ups and downs of history, that throughout all of that ups and downs, and what seemed to be things that went against the oneness of Hashem, ultimately it was all the same one God throughout the entire game. So too it's going to be revealed within the Jewish person that even though it might seem throughout a Jew's life and the collective Jewish people's lives that there's been unbelievable ups and downs when it comes to our religious life, that sometimes we're mamish tzaddikim and sometimes we're terrible rishayim. But the ultimate revelation of Mashiach means to reveal that not only do we make it at the end, but in truth, every point of a Jewish person's life, even at his lowest point, was somehow he was still full of Kedusha. And the greatest level of Kedusha is revealed dafka when a Jew seems to be outside of Kedusha and still somehow is. And still somehow is attached to Kedusha. You know, the word Mashiach numerically equals the word Nachash, which means a snake. Right? Now that's a very strange thing. When we think of a Nachash, right, we think of all Yetzer Hara, all evil. So why in the world would Mashiach be the same gematria as the word Nachash? But the answer is that Pnimis, in what the point of Mashiach, what Mashiach is here is going to come to reveal, is that in the lifetime of every single Jew, even a Jew who his entire life seemed to be living a life of the Nachash, dafka such a Jew was still holy even at his worst, even at his lowest, he was still holy. And the ultimate level of holiness that's revealed in a Jew, the oneness of a Jew, Mashiach will reveal that oneness, who a Jew truly is, as bound to Hashem and bound to Torah mitzvahs, was true throughout the entire story of that Jew, all the ups and downs. And all the times in a person's life where it seemed to be that he was going outside of the barriers of Kedusha, outside of holiness, in truth he never was. And the way Hashem expresses this is that dafka, the last generation before Mashiach comes, is going to look like the worst generation of all. But when one looks from the eyes of Pnimius, we should be able to see in that tumah, in the smallness of our generation, an unbelievable point of greatness. Because that's dafka, that's the whole point of creation. The point of creation is ultimately to reveal the oneness of Hashem throughout Jewish history and the oneness of a Jew throughout his personal history. That no matter what you've done, and no matter how low you've personally sunk or collectively we've sunk, at the end of the day, even in that lowest point, the holiness of a Jew is still 100% intact. And that ultimately is the point of creation, to reveal this truth. You know, therefore it's an amazing, amazing thing. Who was the first Mashiach personality in Jewish history? Who was the first Mashiach personality in Jewish history? So many of us don't know. Shimshon HaGibor, Yaakov Avinu, when he gave the blessing to the Shvatim, when he gave the bracha to the Shevet Dan, so Yaakov Avinu said, he gave a whole bracha, Dan Yodinamik Achat Shiftei Yisrael, that Dan will produce a judge that will take care of the Jewish people, Kivyochel like Hashem, Achat Shiftei Yisrael, David HaMelech. Who is he referring to? He's referring to Shimshon HaGibor. Shimshon HaGibor came from Shevet Dan. And Chazal say that when Yaakov Avinu foresaw in the future Shimshon HaGibor, he thought that he was going to be Mashiach. When he saw a little bit later that Shimshon HaGibor would pass away and didn't work out, so Yaakov Avinu says, L'yishuas l'kvisi Hashem, for your salvation, I hope. It didn't work out. But Shimshon was the first Mashiach archetype. He was the first personality of Mashiach. So if you want to understand what Mashiach is all about, you have to learn about Shimshon a little bit. What was Shimshon? Shimshon Bechlal is a contradiction. The whole story of Shimshon is a power. What was Shimshon? Shimshon, you know the basic story. He was a Nazir, right? He was a Nazir, and he had unbelievable physical strength. And at the same time that he was a Nazir, Kodesh Elyon, an unbelievably holy Jew, and he had this unbelievable physical strength that Hashem gave him, at the same time we see throughout his whole story that there was an issue with him with non-Jewish women. Chazal say, that he went after his eyes. There was an issue with that. So what's Bechlal going on? Shimshon HaGibor. So the Sforno say like this, you know, the whole inyan of Shimshon as being Mashiach is to reveal the holiness of a Jew, the depth of the holiness of a Jew, that even when you find yourself in the lowest of places, nevertheless, on some mysterious level, you're still holy. You're still holy. There's a part of a Jew that even if you sink to terrible places, can never be changed and can never be affected at all. So Shimshon HaGibor is an unbelievable thing. The strength of Shimshon HaGibor, where does Gevurah come from? By Yiddishkeit. What does Mishnah say? Ezo Gibor, who's strong? HaKovish is Yitzhar, the one who conquers his evil inclination. So the strongest Jew of all time, Shimshon HaGibor, must have been the greatest Gibor of all time in Ruchnis to conquer his Yetzer Hara. And he's the one person of all history, of all Jewish history, that seems to be giving into his Yetzer Hara all the time. Mamish non-Jewish women. So it's a contradiction of terms. How could it be that Shimshon is the Gibor, the strong one, whose strength ultimately comes from his ability to conquer the Yetzer Hara, and he seems to be giving into his Yetzer Hara all the time? But the answer is because the essence of Mashiach, the pnimis of Mashiach, is to reveal, and that's what Shimshon started, and Mashiach will ultimately finish. The essence of Mashiach is to reveal that Davka, even those Jews that seem to be giving into the Yetzer Hara constantly, that don't seem to have any strength, ultimately Mashiach will reveal that they are the strongest Jews of all. And even though it doesn't seem possible, like how is it possible that Hashem should reveal such a thing? That Jews that constantly give into the Yetzer Hara, that don't seem to have any strength, will ultimately be proven to be as strong as the greatest tzaddikim of all time, but that's what Mashiach comes to reveal. That's the essence of what Mashiach comes to reveal. Therefore, it's an amazing thing. Where does Shimshon's strength come from? How is it manifested? We know that if you read the story of Shimshon, the strength of Shimshon manifested itself in his hair, right? When his hair was cut off by his wife, he lost his strength. When the hair began to grow back, he gained his strength again. It was all connected to his hair. What does the hair represent? So the Svarmas say the hair is the one part of the body, right, that you could mamish cut it completely off. And you won't feel a thing. You mamish won't feel a thing. So the Svarmas say, though the hairs of Shimshon represented those Jews, that the Jewish people would say about them, just cut them off, get rid of them, throw them in the garbage, they're useless anyway. Davka those Jews, as far as their Yiddishkeit looks to the outside, it looks they are hair-like Jews. That what you just cut it off, the Jewish people don't feel the pain of it, just throw them in the garbage, they're useless. Davka there, Shimshon got his strength. Davka from Jews like that, Shimshon gets his strength to be Mashiach, to reveal that just as the oneness of Hashem will be revealed with Mashiach, that throughout all the ups and downs of history, it's all been the one God manipulating the system, so too it is with the holiness of a Jew, that when Mashiach comes, it will be fully revealed that those Jews that seem to be like hair, as far as the Ruchnis, that seem to be able, that you can mamish discard them and cut them off, they're useless. It'll be ultimately revealed that Davka those Jews are the strongest Jews of all. And somehow it'll be proven that through their ups and downs, from their highest of highest to the lowest of lows, the Kedushas Yisrael has never wavered at all. And ultimately, the true extreme Kedushas, the extreme of Jewish holiness, will be revealed Davka in those Jews. That because holiness, the extreme of holiness will be fully revealed when you have a Jew who did everything he could possibly can to disconnect himself from holiness, and ultimately it's proven he can't. That's how you show ultimately the greatness of a Jew. So let's give one. That's all been out there. Let me give one pashut example of our generation. Because again, the avodah of our generation specifically is to look into ourselves and to recognize that which is dark and that which is bitter, but find the nekudah pnimis, but find that point of greatness where in that darkness you could find an unbelievable light. So Mashiach is coming very soon, hopefully. And Chazal say when Mashiach comes, the pasuk says in Yoel, the eshbech es ruchi al kol basar. The Torah says that when Mashiach comes, Hashem is going to pour His Spirit on all human beings, on all Jews. And we're all going to become Nevi'im. We're all going to become Nevi'im. Now, it's an amazing thing when you're a little kid, so, what makes a kid beautiful is very often is their imagination, is their ability to, the sky's the limit, I've never met a kid where you ask them, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I never met a kid that said, I want to get stuck in a dead-end job with, like, a boss that's miserable and, in a little cubicle. You ask a kid, what does he want to do when he grows up? So, Superman, Batman, you know what I mean? They're a little bit more religious, or Rabbi, things like that. But, when we get older, right, that's when we sort of lose that, vision of grandeur, that, what we can become, and we sort of begin to convince ourselves that we're little people, that we should be stuck in some cubicle somewhere. But the truth is we have to think bigger, The pasuk says that there was a special mitzvah, a special prohibition not to plant a tree in the Beis HaMikdash. Plant a tree in the Beis HaMikdash. Why not? It's a random thing. So the Yishbitzer writes in Meir Shiloh, he says that the issue of planting a tree in the Beis HaMikdash means like this: the Beis HaMikdash is a place of davening. Beis HaMikdash is a place where a Jew can aspire to greatness, right? You go to the Beis HaMikdash, You want to become a tzaddik. So the Torah says, don't plant a tree in the Beis Hamikdash. Don't put a roof on where you want to get. You know what I'm saying? When you're davening Beis Hamikdash and you're looking up to heaven and you're imagining how great you can become, I don't want you to see, says Hashem, I don't want you to see leaves to block your vision. I want you to imagine yourself mamish all the way up in heaven. We have to imagine ourselves, we have to recognize that our destiny is not to become just like good people. Our destiny is not to become good Jews or, good Jews 9 to 5, whatever the case may be. Our destiny is to become Nevi'im, to become prophets. When Mashiach comes, we're all going to become Nevi'im. Plain and Pasha. As simple as that, we're all going to become Nevi'im. So what I want to talk about for the next few minutes is, listen, if Mashiach's going to come any minute, hopefully, and we're all going to become Nevi'im like that, it doesn't work like that. There has to be a transition. There's a growth. There's a development. And if we're supposed to become Nevi'im, mamish when Mashiach comes, so what's amazing is that Hashem implanted in our generation specifically the tools to become Nevi'im, mamish. Mamish to become Nevi'im is implanted in our generation. But what's crazy is that those tools that are needed to become a Navi are themselves clothed in the ugliness of our generation as well. Like we've been talking about until now. The dafka, the greatness of a Jew, the ultimate greatness of a Jew is encased and is covered by that which looks the most ugly. So in our generation, what gives us mamish the potential to become the greatest of all, mamish Nevi'im, every single one of us, is davka enclosed in that which is the most ugly of our generation. How so?
I think Chazal say,
so there's madrega to be a shaykh.
Yeah.
It's madrega. So we'll talk about this. What did it take to be a Navi? Let's go back 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years. Go back 2,000 years to the times of the first Beis Hamikdash. How did you become a Navi? So the truth is like this. Many of us don't know this. But during the times of the first Beis Hamikdash, there were 2 tracks of yeshiva. There were 2 yeshivas. When a kid went to yeshiva, he had 2 options. He had either to go to the regular yeshiva, which ultimately the purpose was to produce a Talmid Chacham, a rabbi. That was the ultimate purpose of the yeshiva even back then. But if the child so chose, he had the option of going to alternative school. The alternative yeshiva was the yeshiva of Nevi'im, a yeshiva that was set up to produce Nevi'im. Now, that's an amazing thing. And therefore, when you read Tanakh and you find the term B'nai Nevi'im, that's referring to the yeshiva students of those yeshivas, of the Nevi'im. B'nai Nevi'im, the students of the Nevi'im. So what did it take to get into those yeshivas, right? Sometimes, it's hard to get into yeshivas nowadays. So what would it have taken to get into those yeshivas then? So we have a tradition from the Arizal. I'll read you a little bit. This is from the Shari Kedusha. The Arizal had a tradition of what it took to get into those yeshivas. And it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. I want you to keep this in mind, that as I tell you what the criteria was to get in, keep in mind that this is where we're going to be when Mashiach comes. So just keep that in mind. Again, you have to think big. You got to dream big. He says like this. On the thing to get in, it said like this. First of all, complete tshuva for anything wrong you've ever done. And it's a tshuva that's real. Not like, I'll see you tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? A real tshuva that you're never going to do it again. And keep in mind, your Rebbe was a Navi. So, he can't pass notes. He knows if it's legit. You know what I'm saying? So, your Rebbe is a Navi, the Rashi was a Navi. There's nothing, you're not slipping anything by him. So, number 1, do tshuva on everything you've ever done. Okay, fine, done. Next. Then he says, there's a list of certain mitzvahs that you have to be very careful in order to get into the yeshiva. What are some examples? He says like this. First of all, every single day you have to learn a little bit during the day, a little bit at night. You have to be kve'it. Now that means, by the way, that you could work when you're in this yeshiva. It's not like you have to be sitting in cut. You're allowed to work. But you have to be kve'it, you have to learn every day. That's number 1. You miss one day, you kicked out of yeshiva. Fine. Next, every single day, 3 times a day when you daven, you have to daven with kavanah. So you chap a mincha, 5 minutes, you know what I'm saying? Like you just chap, you don't really think about what's going on, you kicked out of yeshiva. And again, your Rosh Yeshiva is a Navi, he knows exactly. So you have to daven with kavanah 3 times a day. Next, every bracha you make in benching, and every bracha that you make on food has to be with kavanah. You just say a shahak without thinking about it, kicked out of yeshiva. It's pretty tough. And he goes on like this. Next, you have to love every Jew completely. Every Jew completely, with all your heart. And he goes on to say you have to stay away from certain averos as well, no lashon hara, all these things. And he goes on at the end and he says another few points. And it says the person has to be completely removed from anger. And the Arizal taught that the one character trait which makes a person removed from prophecy the most is anger. And he goes on to say a person has to be exceedingly humble to get into this yeshiva. To the point of where it would not make a difference to the student whether he's praised by someone or whether he's cursed by someone. To him it makes no difference, that's how humble we're talking about. And he goes on to say stipulations like this. Now that's an unbelievable thing to get in. Any person nowadays to get into this yeshiva would be considered a gadol hador, right? So we're talking about now how many people were in these yeshivas. So it's an amazing thing to think about. And again, keep in mind, this is who we are going to be very soon. We have a tradition from Chazal that in our history there's been over 1.5 million Nevi'im. 1.5 million Nevi'im. And keep in mind, just like when it comes to yeshiva, not everyone that goes to yeshiva comes out a rabbi at the end. So not everyone that went to the yeshiva came out a Navi. But ultimately who came out? Over 1.5 million Nevi'im, which means there was probably tens of millions of students at these yeshivas. It's an unbelievable thing. Fine, you got in. Now what? What's the curriculum? What are you learning in Navi school? So the truth is like this. The Arizal taught that the curriculum in the yeshiva was besides the usual, Chumash, Gemara, Halacha, maybe, probably not math and science, whatever. A certain type of science they learned, but not the science that we learned. The unique curriculum of the yeshiva of Nevi'im was Pnimis HaTorah, was Kabbalah. Why? So, very simply, very quickly, because I don't have a lot of time left at all. If I want to go on a road trip, for example, I want to go from here to California. So I need two things. I need to have directions. I need to know how to get from here to there. And second of all, I need to actually have a car, right? Those are two things you need. If a person wants to be a Navi and wants to talk to God, Mamash wants to talk to God, right? And have Hashem to converse with him, and he wants to allow his neshama to go to Shemayim and to Mamash to get to the highest of places, he has to know where to go. And therefore, a major part of the curriculum in Navi Yeshiva was Pashut, to know what's going on there, what's the directions. What's going on here? How do I, what's the names of Hashem, the names of Malachim, all that stuff. That's section number 1 of the curriculum. And section number 2 was in order to actually experience that, in order to actually get there, to drive to Olam Yisrael, a Jew had to be proficient in meditation, unbelievably proficient in God's names, all that stuff. So it's all Pnimius HaTorah. Now, this is the last thing that I want to get to this one. The Svarim tell us that one of the most core necessary components for a person to become a Navi, after you've got into the yeshiva, and you've learned the curriculum, you know what's going on in heaven, and you actually know how to get there, all that, it's all taken care of. The one necessary component that a Navi had to have in order to experience Nevuah was a fully developed imagination. A fully developed imagination. If a Jew was just a cerebral, just a computer, just a brain, without the heart, without the imagination, without dreaming, there would be no way for him to experience the next world in this world. There would be no way for him to experience Nevuah. The only way a Jew that was able to become a Navi is if with all the curriculum, with all the knowledge that he learned, all that stuff, his imagination had to be unbelievable. He had to dream big. That's exactly what the Navi needed. An unbelievable power of imagination. Ever since the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the one faculty that has been almost completely removed from the Jewish people has been imagination. Because ever since the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Yiddishkeit has been defined in a very cerebral way. The Yiddishkeit is a book of laws. Do this, don't do that. And learning Torah means figuring out all the details. Very cerebral. What has been removed from us from the time of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash has been the imaginative side of Yiddishkeit. To think, to dream, to imagine, to feel emotionally attached to God. To sort of experience Yiddishkeit, not just to think about it and to do, but to feel it. In order for Mashiach to come, in order for Nevuah to return, the one thing that has to be opened up again is imagination. The one thing that has to be fully developed once again is emotion, is feeling, is ragshus. That's what has to be brought back. That's what's been missing all these decades, all these centuries, and that's what has to be brought back. All the problems of our generation, all the ugliness, all the darkness, all the bitterness of our generation are revolving around this one point of imagination run amok. Imagination run amok. Whether it be, I don't have to go into the details. We all know the stuff that we're dealing with. But it's all about escaping. Every single problem of our generation is revolving on one thing. It's trying to escape reality. Just to escape, to imagine imagination. That's what it is. When in order for Mashiach to come, in order for us to become who we truly can become, who we will become, we need imagination to ultimately be brought back. And therefore what we have to do is not to ignore that which makes us unique. It's not about ignoring the problems that we have, but it's harnessing, understanding where it's coming from. And what we're sitting here tonight, this whole chevra sitting here tonight, in my mind, is really embodying this whole inyan. Where else in Jewish history, where in Jewish history have you had such a thing? That guys this age come together, not to learn a block Gemara, that we've had, and that we still have, but together and to talk about inspired Yiddishkeit. There's never been such a thing. Never since the time of the Nevi'im has there been such a thing. Because the chevra like this, what we're doing right now, is that we're tapping into that which makes our generation uniquely great. Which is also the same thing that makes our generation uniquely difficult. Because it's about understanding and appreciating our unique qualities, which is imagination, which is passion, energy, excitement, emotion. Who was in the cover of Time magazine 100 years ago? Albert Einstein, right? Brains, right? That's what people look up to now. Who do people look up to now? Athletes, actresses, actors. Imagination. It's all baloney, it's all fake, but that's what the world looks up to. Why? Because that's the unique strength of our generation. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go. Don't discard it. Don't feel bad about it. That's who we are. And the chizuk that we have to take is to just harness that quality and to bring it to life and bring it out in the open in a healthy, holy way. In a healthy, holy way. Let me end off, I know I'm past, but let me just end off with a quick story, and then I'll stop. Just a quick maisa. The maisa goes that in the city of Lubavitch, under the Tzemach Tzedek, there was one young kid who went off the derech. The kid went off the derech, and he spent all his money on the, instead of like a motorcycle, he spent his money on a beautiful racehorse. That's what he did. And his kid was a little bit rebellious about it. So Dafka Shabbos afternoon, he rode his horse to shul and tied the horse to the doors of the shul. So everyone's coming out and they're, saying, it's terrible, this kid. So Tzedek walks out, tells the kid, young, Meishel or whatever, it's a beautiful horse. What are its qualities? And the guy, the kid said, this is the fastest horse in the town. Mamish fastest. So the Rebbe said, I'm very nervous. What happens if you're riding very, very quickly down the road, and the horse decides to take a wrong turn? You're going to get very, very lost very, very quickly. So the kid didn't know what to say. So someone said, you know what? I'm not so worried. Because that same speed of the horse that can get you extremely lost very quickly, it could also find its way back very quickly. That's what he said to the kid. That's our story. That's our story. It's not about ignoring that which makes us difficult, that which makes our lives difficult. It's not about pretending it's not there. It's about harnessing that and understanding, turning that which is dark into that which is sweet. That's what we have to do. We have to make more groups like this. We have to inspire ourselves. We have to sing more. We have to daven more with heart. We have to become more imaginative Jews. And the more we do that, the more we'll be able to turn that which is dark into that which is sweet. The more we'll be able to pave the way to Mashiach coming, and for us also ultimately to become who we can become. All right, thank you for the time. I apologize for going over.
Thank you very much.